Right, let's break this down for you and get you more on the story now. We have roped in Ahren, Posthumus, CEO and founder of energy solutions company Momint, as we look at the Eskom's proposed tariff hike and 250-day mark of no load shedding. Mr. Posthumus, thank you so much for your time on the late edition today. So, now, we see that we're just over 250 odd days without load shedding here in South Africa. Are we likely to keep this up? And is it really a good news story to tell thus far?
Yeah, so I've been, along with my colleagues in the industry, incredibly critical of Eskom in the past because of load shedding, which was only getting worse over the last decade. So we do have to give some credit here to the fact that there has been no load shedding for the last 250 days. However, if we look at the data, it begins to tell us something slightly different, right? So Eskom, according to its own website, has stated that there have been 1,600 megawatts less unplanned outages, which doesn't equate to load shedding, but unplanned outages of sites. However, the REAP program has added about 6,000 megawatts of power. That's only up to 2023 because we're still getting some data in from 2024. So you can imagine an analogy. Imagine giving your wife 100 Rand and she leaves the house and she comes back with 50. The next time she goes out, you give 200 Rand and she comes back with 60. Yes, she's come back with more money than last time, and that's a good thing. But the private benefactor has been putting in a lot more. And if we're looking at the renewable energy program, that's to the tune of about 256 billion Rand, according to my data. Again, data only as of 2023. That's private sector investment into renewable energy in South Africa. So the private sector's come in to the tune of 256 billion Rand, building about 6,000 megawatts of energy, and that's what's really stabilized the grid here. So we can really thank renewables and, again, government regulation for welcoming these renewables with the REAP program. Eskom still, unfortunately, has to pick up its game, and these tariff hikes are not the path to sustainability.
But when we look at this whole renewable energy that is coming into the mix now, is this whole system now sustainable?
So currently it is sustainable. We are going to face some issues within the next decade if we continue on the current trajectory, specifically with transmission. So we're seeing transmission issues in places like the Northern Cape, the Eastern Cape, as well as KwaZulu-Natal. These are areas with exceptional sun yield, the Northern Cape specifically, and lots of solar has been built there. But we need to build transmission lines to sell those to our neighbors, and that can help Eskom generate some revenue outside of doing a tariff increase. And as well as busy transporting that energy, wheeling it on the grid to other businesses and homes. And again, most likely the private sector will come in and fit that bill as long as there's a profit margin that they can make on it. And fortunately, with the falling cost of solar, for example, the profit margins are only getting better every year. We've seen about a 20% decrease in the hardware year on year. So the technology is getting cheaper and cheaper. We actually suggested, along with this process, 3 specific things that Eskom could do to avoid doing a tariff increase. The first one was cutting down on staff. Eskom is estimated to be overstaffed by around 66%, according to my broadband. They also need better coal procurement. That's our second suggestion. We know that coal procurement is still losing a lot of coal to theft and corruption on a year-on-year basis. And the third one, which I think really needs to be seriously interrogated, is green bonds. So Eskom can get involved in the green bond market, selling green bonds internationally. South Africa already has very good regulation around green bonds and green credits for how good these renewable energies are for the environment. There's some money to be made there, and it should not be put on the consumer. A 36% price increase is untenable in the current economy, especially when since 2008, Eskom has increased prices by about 450%. It's an insane number. I cannot believe it. In 2023, it was 18 when inflation was only about 5.9. In 2024, they increased it by 12% when inflation was only 4.9. So really, it's unjustifiable where these price increases are coming from, and they need to improve their efficiencies first and foremost.
And I'm actually going to want us to get into the ripple effects of it all just in a short while. And I know that you've spoke about the grid improvements, and I'm sure this is a sentiment that most South Africans share, that we're just happy that we have not seen load shedding in a very long time. What have all these grid improvements been attributed to in layman's?
So that's actually quite a difficult question, but yes, I think certainly South Africans are happy going into December specifically. It's been a long and hard year. All of us, we could definitely do without some load shedding in this December season. That would be lovely, and I hope that Eskom keeps its track record going. In simple terms, private rooftop solar is what we're seeing and what I'm attributing to the biggest factor contributing to the lack of load shedding. Peak power consumption in the daytime is now being taken over by really great wheeling projects. There's some amazing solar projects that are above the gigawatt scale across the country. So all of this private investment on private rooftops, I mean, you asked me to say it in layman, so I'm trying to make it simple. We now have power generators on the roofs rather than outside of Cape Town or Mapogeng or wherever they are busy distributing power over, kilometers. And you lose about 30% of power when you transport it over the power lines. But if you have it directly on top of your roof and the power is just coming to the building underneath, that's a much more efficient system. And that's been working really, really well. Unfortunately, the wealthy are the most able to fund their own solar installations, and that means that they're going completely off grid, and that also means that they'll be protected from this 36% price increase. Again, a very strong reason why the 36% increase is absolutely untenable.
And of course, just going back to this, this rising cost of electricity, I remember having a conversation with the likes of Jibusa, who actually said that this is unacceptable. And to say also the ripple effects of it all means that also municipalities might also start defaulting, and this is likely to have devastating effects. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more. If you look at our Gini coefficient, which is a measure of poverty in countries, South Africa is one of the most impoverished countries in the world, or having one of the biggest divides between the rich and the poor. This is only going to worsen that divide. And I think it was really well said in that interview that was stated just before I started speaking. They're inviting NERSA to come out to the community because they know for a fact that government officials don't understand how the typical South African lives, how a South African without money or living below the breadline, how they live their lives. So I completely agree. The ripple effect will be devastating. We're going to see more inflation. We're going to see less affordability, more poverty. It's going to be a disaster for the country, honestly. We need to see subsidies for low-income homes.
Ahren, Posthumus, thank you so much for your time and your insights this hour on The Late Edition. Thank you very much indeed for that. Now, that is, of course, the CEO and founder of Energy Solutions company, Ahren, joining us there. Thank you very much indeed.